So I live in a flat with 3 other people, childhood best friend, a guy from my uni course and his cousin. For the most part we get along really well and rarely have disagreements. However, this has been a real point of contention lately. About 6 months ago I began a relationship with a guy I've known for a couple of years. I know it's still a fairly new relationship, but I really like him. He makes me really happy and we're pretty serious about each other. Up until recently, he would come visit me at my flat 3 to 4 times a week. This was mostly due to the fact that I have chronic fatigue and going on proper dates can be really challenging for me. Instead of going out to dinner or a film or whatever, we'd just chill in my room or the living room, watch TV and get takeout or cook together. I didn't really consult anyone about this say. All the other flatmates have their partners over as often if not more so, and he rarely spends the night and usually leaves before 10 p.m. because of his work schedule. So the issue, 2 weeks ago, comes to me and tells me that I need to stop having my boyfriend over because it's starting to get annoying. I asked her why and she said it's irritating to have someone who doesn't live there, skulking around all the time. I pointed out that her boyfriend sleeps over 3 nights a week and thus is here more often than mine, and she claimed that was different because they've been together for 11 years and are moving in together once her lease is up. She said she's discussed it with the other flatmates and they've all agreed he needs to stop coming over or he has to chip into the rent, because it's getting ridiculous. Note, nobody else's partner chips in on the rent. I confirmed with the other 2 that yes, this is an agreement they've made. Though my best friend said basically made her agree by threatening to cut off the Wi-Fi and utilities, which are in her name, if she didn't. I asked if this rule applies to everyone, but apparently it's just me. I pointed out that it's unfair and was basically told to deal with it. My potential assholery, I've begun loudly insisting that if my partner isn't allowed to come over, neither is anybody else's. If I answer the door to anyone's partner, I'll send them away. If I come home and someone's partner is there, I'll make a point to mention that I thought we weren't having partners who don't pay rent over anymore. I've asked boyfriend over and over how much rent he's paying and pretend to be affronted and make a fuss when he says he doesn't. Everyone's pretty pissed at me and is telling me I'm being unreasonable. I know I'm being petty, but I think it's unreasonable that there's one rule for me and another for everyone else, and I'm trying to make that point. Am I really the asshole here? Some questions people keep asking. If I knew of something my boyfriend was doing to be annoying / if anyone had told me that he was doing something, I'd have included it. I'm not aware of anything he does, and when I ask why I doesn't like him, I just get a shrug and just do. I will also state I'm bi, and she's never had an issue with any female partners I've had. We don't hang out in the living room much. We literally only use it if there's something we want to watch that I can't get on my bedroom TV and there's nobody else in there. We use the kitchen more often than the living room, but honestly even that isn't that often. We eat far too much takeout pizza rip. A lot of people seem confused, so just clearing up who's who in the situation. The one who brought all this up is not my best friend. Not to get too much into a tangent, but basically just over a year ago I was moving out of halls at university and was looking for a new place, so we decided to move in together. At the same time, a dude from my course was looking for a flat share. We couldn't find a 3-bed but found a really nice 4-bed, and he mentioned his cousin was also looking for somewhere to live, so she got on board too. I only met her last year and we don't really know each other very well. By chronic fatigue I mean chronic fatigue syndrome. Sorry, that's apparently so unclear. I am a 33 years old female, and I have had fertility issues for the past couple of years with my husband. He's 35. We went through with consultations, and while we had very promising results for treatment, the cost did give us pause. It wasn't that we couldn't afford it, we just weren't at the point yet where we were willing to pay. I discussed it with my husband and we were both fine with the idea of adopting. My cousin Tiffany, woman 25 years old, is adopted and she supported our choice in looking into it. However, this was a couple of years back, and during that time Tiffany was reunited with her birth parents, and she's been acting pretty hurtful to my aunt and uncle since then. She keeps making posts about how happy she is to know where she comes from and is happy about being reunited with her real family. She even talked about having her birth father walk her down the aisle as a chance to make up for lost time. Obviously my uncle was very hurt about this, but when he voiced it Tiffany got defensive. She called my uncle selfish, how this was about her and that he knew what he signed up for when raising someone else's kid. Before the pandemic, Tiffany moved closer to where her bio mother lived so they could make up for lost time. And Tiffany kept making post after post about all the fun she was having meeting relatives. And how she called / video chatted with each of her bio parents multiple times a week. Meanwhile, she barely texted back my uncle and aunt once a month. I could tell how heartbroken my aunt and uncle were, but tried to give Tiffany her space, and the few times they said anything she accused them of being selfish and unsupportive. I think the biggest thing that broke them was when Tiffany promised to come by for my aunt's birthday and was even given the money to travel to them, but then never showed up. She called literally the day before to say that her bio mom had an emergency so she wasn't going to make it, but didn't give back the money. I am completely disgusted by Tiffany's behavior, and while I haven't completely ruled out adoption entirely, I did want to give medical-assisted conception a try. My husband supported this, and we are now currently expecting. After we made our announcement, Tiffany messaged me asking why I would spend thousands on creating a child when I could help one who already existed. I tried to play it off, but Tiffany kept pressing and calling me a bad person when there are so many children who desperately need a home, and overpopulation. It got to the point where she was pissing me off, and I just came clean and said that her behavior towards the people who loved and raised her was the reason. Tiffany got really upset, but I didn't care. However, her parents are now starting to say that I was wrong. My cousin Amy has twins and has a nasty habit of dumping them onto relatives to babysit for the entire day without any warning or regard for their time. I have a very strained relationship with her, but because my mom's side of the family demands that we all remain close-knit, so I have no choice to tolerate her. When she initially gave birth to them, she teased me that I'll have to take on babysitting duty from now on. I'm no good with kids, so I remarked to her that if I ever have them, I'll train them, not babysit. She brushed me off. The kids now are hella destructive and loud, pulling out stuffing inside furniture, holes inside walls, smashing anything glass and porcelain, screaming louder than a fire alarm. You name it. When it was my first turn to deal with them, I immediately walked with them to the store and grabbed the biggest bag of M&Ms I could find and trained them so that every time they follow my orders and behave, they get one. If they misbehave, I get one. Soon enough, every time the kids were dumped on me, they went with my guidelines and behaved. Whenever I say sit, they sit at the table. When I say stay, they don't leave that spot, etc. 2 days ago there was a party planned with the whole extended family. I know, pandemic. Didn't want to, but mom insisted, and I grabbed the M&Ms since the twins were there. Arrived, twins were being so destructive, an entire tray of food was spilled. That all the adults had enough and yelled at Amy to control them. She vomited the same excuse of them just being kids and they'll grow out of it eventually. I shouted the twins' names and shook my M&Ms bag. They came running over to me and I popped 6 pieces into my mouth for their misbehavior. I told them to go clean up the mess or no candy all night. They do so. Halfway through the party, every time something similar came up or they just weren't behaving, I was the one able to calm them down. When Amy saw what I was doing, she got angry and started yelling at me about how her children aren't animals and that I shouldn't be giving them so much candy anyway. I told her that I'm their aunt, not their parent. Why am I the one disciplining them? Isn't that her job? She screamed the same argument at me, and since she's their mother, to stop giving them candy. One of the twins overheard and went apeshit. Dashed straight into the kitchen and started shattering anything they can get his hands on, shouting over and over that he wants candy. His twin joined him soon after. I repeated that she's their mother, and just sat in the living room watching it all unfold. At the end, Amy blamed me for them turning out this way. The other relatives she dumped them on, a majority, disagreed, but when I told a friend about the situation, he told me that the training I did can really up the kids mentally later in life. My husband Derek and I have been married for 3 years, together for 7 total. Several years ago, about 6 now, I guess, I worked closely with a male coworker, Paul, that Derek was never fond of. Paul and I never had an inappropriate relationship. Derek's jealousy wasn't completely out of nowhere. I get why he felt that way. Those couple years were a perfect storm of relationship stress. I was working long hours. We were living apart after trying and failing to move in together. Our relationship was still fairly new. And then you add in a handsome coworker I had to spend long hours with and saw more than my boyfriend at the time. Paul was the source of several fights. Again, we never did anything that wasn't completely kosher. Eventually I told Derek he needed to trust me and get over it, or we were going to have to break up. He said he would stop worrying, and for the most part things were good. When Paul transferred out of state a few months later, things were really good. There were no worries at all, and our relationship has been amazingly strong ever since. This last weekend, my husband went out with a couple friends to some bars and a football game. When he came home, he was pretty wasted. We talked for a bit, and he mentioned how a friend of his had told him that he broke up with his girlfriend because she cheated on him. I commented on how that was a bummer and good for him for finding out before they got too serious. Derek, however, had a different take on it. He said it was a shame because they had seemed like a good couple, and if they really loved each other his friend could move past the cheating. Just like he had with me. At first I thought my husband was admitting to cheating on me, and asked him what he meant. He told me he always knew that Paul and I had slept together at least once all those years ago. But he knew I was the one for him and forgave me. I told Derek that I had never so much as even hugged Paul, except maybe at his going away party, let alone slept with him. Derek sort of just patted me on the arm, said of course, and passed out. The next morning I asked him about the conversation and he said it was okay, he had forgiven me, it wasn't even an issue. I again stressed that I had never cheated on him with anybody and I needed him to believe me. He sort of did the same, of course you didn't, babe wink thing again, and went to work. Every time I've tried to talk to him since, he won't hear me out. I'm this close to losing it with him. I need him to know that I never cheated, and I'm hurt that he thinks I would do something like that. What do I do? Do I just let him have this since it's not really hurting anything, or what? I don't want my own husband to think so little of me that he thinks I would cheat. That's not who I am.